Hi everyone, and welcome to Breadonomics. In this video, I'll be breaking down one of the short response questions from the Queensland QCE Economics 2024 External Exam. There were 4 questions in this section for a total of 29 marks. The first question I'll be looking at is question 11, which is worth 4 of those marks. In the response book, you were given about 10 lines to write your response, which equals about 80 words. If you haven't had a go at writing a response to this question yourself, pause the video now, write a response, about 80 words, and then follow on with video to see my unpacking method to achieve full marks for this question. Question 11 reads as follows. The federal government decides to significantly increase spending on military defence over the long term. Describe the concept of opportunity cost using an example based on the given scenario. How might this decision have an impact on the federal government's objective of stabilising the economic cycle? The first phase in answering this question is to determine what is happening, and I've underlined that concept in red. The federal government decides to increase spending on military defence over the long term. We can see now that there is an economic decision at play. It's a big decision. When you see in these questions it says words like significantly, lean on that in your response. It's an increase in spending and it's a decision of the elected members of government. So we're looking here at discretionary fiscal policy, putting it into military defence. We don't know whether it's going towards building more weapons or tanks or whether it's going towards increasing the number of employees in military. We don't know anything about that yet. But we do know that they're looking to increase spending over the long term, and that time horizon is very important to consider in this question. Step 2 of your response is to consider how will the change affect the economy? And I've underlined in red the relevant sentence of the question that relates to this. Describe the concept of opportunity cost using an example based on the given scenario. Always remember with these questions, folks, apply ceteris paribus, all else remaining equal. As I mentioned about military defence, we don't know whether it's going towards making more products or employing more people. All we know is it's going towards a certain sector of public spending. In the how the change will affect the economy, we have to start thinking now about the opportunity cost and trade-offs that would occur with an increase in spending by the government. Economic theory helps us to unpack some of this. We can think about some opportunity costs of fiscal expenditure generally, what the effects are on government expenditure, and potentially what they might have to do with taxation, how that change or that increase in spending will affect the budget stance and the budget outcomes. Will it put us more into a deficit budget position, or will it lead us to more of a surplus budget position? And because it's increased spending, if we're not going to get the money through taxation, how will it influence our level of government debt? And then what are the positives and negative implications of potentially taking on more government debt? It says to use an example. So make sure you think about these examples. I've put some down here for you. You could increase the taxes to cover the additional expenditure, or the government could choose to increase its level of debt, not put the burden onto households and firms through tax collection, but rather think about it in terms of borrowing money to pay for this increased spending. The third option you could go for is to decrease expenditure in another publicly funded area, such as healthcare or education, something along those lines. But what we really know at the moment is we don't know much more about the government decisions beyond that they want to spend more money in military defence. So this is where, for these short questions, you have to really target your response to the granular nature of the question. The third and final phase of answering a question like this one is to refer to our final sentence. How might this decision have an impact on the federal government's objective of stabilising the economic cycle? And in other words, contemplating whether it's a good decision or a bad decision. Why is it a good decision or a bad decision to significantly increase spending on military defence over the long term? And we can think back to our opportunity costs that we might incur along the way, either greater levels of taxation on households and firms, which would lead to a slowdown in economic activity, or the other way you could do it is through increasing your levels of debt. But when we stabilise the economic cycle, we're looking to influence the level of aggregate demand and short-run aggregate supply to achieve our 3 economic indicators within sort of the reasonable objectives. Okay, we see that we've already made a decision. It's a big one, it's big discretionary fiscal policy, and it's going to happen for a long time. When we think about the role of government in influencing the level of AD and SRAS, we can think about how that shows up in hitting GDP targets, inflation targets, unemployment targets, and managing those targets in peaks and troughs of economic cycles. Generally speaking, fiscal policy seems to be most successful to help boost an economy out of a trough. Okay, it's easy to have some further expenditure during a top trough, like during COVID, where we saw handouts to individuals and to households and to firms to maintain their consumer expenditure. We can also think about stabilising the economy from both the automatic stabiliser effect, but also the discretionary stabilisation of the economy. And in this question, I think we're really focusing on that discretionary side. So applying ceteris paribus once again to, would spending more money on military over the long term be beneficial to us being able to stabilise the economic cycle if we hit an economic downturn? And I think that's the big question here, is can the government effectively intervene to stabilise the economy during a trough when it holds higher levels of debt from increased spending over the long term? So potentially money would be borrowed to pay for all this increased spending. And when we have higher levels of debt in our federal budget, the question is, do we then have available funds to provide those stimulus handouts when required? As a reminder, all past papers for your subjects in the QCE Queensland curriculum are available online at QCEA website, and the marking guides and response guides are available as well. So with this question here, we see that it was allocated 4 marks, describes opportunity cost as the next best spending alternative, provides a relevant example, very open in terms of what you could offer there, explains how military spending restricts the government's ability to stabilise the economic cycle, and you can read about that in the second paragraph of their sample response there, and uses some accurate detail. And with accurate detail, I think one way to do it is always to refer back to your theory. I keep all these videos available for you to view in order at breadonomics.com, where I also try and build up more and more resources for learning how to get through senior economics. I hope this video is helpful. If you've got any questions, comments, queries, please leave them in the comments below, and always appreciate a subscribe. Thanks everyone, and good luck with your studies.